I know everybody likes to beat up on human resources, but sometimes they deserve the reputation. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 shady things that your human resource department does, and they probably don't want you to know about it. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I'm going to peel back the ugly underbelly of corporate culture, and specifically your human resource department. At the lower levels of organizations, the human resource department can be a very good ally, and I've worked with some really excellent people who truly care about the employee and the employment experience. And I'm going to lump in both human resources and talent acquisition into some of the things that I'll be talking about today, but oftentimes they're two distinctly different departments. So I just want to clarify that before we begin. But I've had a chance to work in both departments, and I've been an employee and a hiring manager, so I've had a lot of different interactions with the human resources department, some positive, some not so positive. So in this video, I want to spill the beans and share some of the things that your human resource department probably doesn't want you to know about, because some of them are kind of shady. But before we get into that, if you're interested in more career-related content just like this directly from a corporate recruiter, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content. So pretty much everybody at this point in time has had at least one run-in with the human resource department that's probably not been the most positive. Universally speaking, they do have a bad rap. And while I try to maintain a position of neutrality, not pro-employee or pro-company, I'm pro-person who wants to reclaim control in their career, sometimes human resources makes it really hard for me to defend their actions. The first one starts from the moment you begin interacting with the employer, and this is all the way back to the application process. And it's documentation. And I'm sure you've probably noticed, but your human resource department is utterly obsessed with documenting every single thing that happens in the employment arrangement. Because when you think about it, when you start your employment journey with that company, you go through an employment application, and at the bottom of the application, you sign that you understand what the application means. There's some disclaimers in legalese, and you basically state that everything on the application is truthful. Same thing goes with the offer letter. When you get it, read through the terms and the conditions, and there's so many different variables and legalese that they want your signature on the very bottom. Then once you get into the employment process itself, you have to go through a background check. Of course, they're going to check all that stuff. You have to sign it again. They're documenting everything. And when you start your orientation, you're probably going to go through a series of training courses that will review a lot of policies and documents, again, that you have to sign. And when you start the job, you're probably going to have to go through an orientation where you'll be required to watch some videos and go through some training. And then again, you're signing off on all the policies that that company has. And even the employee handbook has a place for your signature stating that you've received it and that you understand what's in it. And of course, there's an area on your performance appraisals that requires your signature as well. And if you happen to have any documented coaching sessions, the key term here is documented, because they're going to ask for your signature there. And then when you exit the company, they're going to ask for your signature on additional things, especially those severance packages, because they always come with terms and conditions. So why is human resources so obsessed with documenting everything, and in particular, getting your signature? And here's the bottom line answer. Everything that they do is designed to limit their liability and potentially build a case against you, whether they have to use it or they don't. They're collecting all of these documents, they go into an employment file, and if they need them at some point in the future, you can guarantee they're going to point to them to defend their decision against you. And I know that that sounds overly harsh, but the reality is that the human resource department is there to limit liability for the company first and foremost. So never forget that. The next thing that your human resource department does that's really shady is confidential job postings. If you've ever gone and looked for a job and the company's name was blanked out or said confidential, the reason is that that job posting is considered to be a confidential rec. And what's the significance of that? By far, the most common reason that a company will post a confidential job is that they are actively replacing the person who is sitting in it. But that person actually doesn't know that they're being replaced. So if the company were to publish their name along with the job title, the person sitting in that role might go, hey, wait a minute, what's going on with this? And of course, that could cause waves. So essentially, the company's being shady in that they're getting a head start on replacing you without even telling you yet. And the idea is, once they make a move to terminate you, they'll already have somebody else ready to go. And in fact, they may not terminate you until they hire that other person. So if you're a job seeker looking for a new job, you have to ask yourself, do I really want to work for a company who would replace me right behind my back and then tell me as soon as my new replacement is walking in to take my desk? Because the chances are, if they're doing it for that person, they can certainly do it for you. And that's not a great way to start your employment arrangement. The next common thing that human resources departments does that's shady is they will try to pay you less than you deserve, and they'll often hide behind process and policy. They will try to get you for the cheapest price, especially if you don't know what you're doing in the salary negotiation process. And here's a hint. The salary negotiation starts the minute you apply for the job. But oftentimes the human resource department will try to get you to fit into very narrow and often rigid salary bands. And they'll use things like internal equity as an excuse for why they can't pay a certain amount. And they'll often try to give you a lower than expected offer with the promise that they'll revisit things in a few months or that they'll make a salary revision after a certain period of time. And here's the deal. I've talked to too many people where that's never come to fruition. So I would not hold my breath on that. Unless it's included in my offer letter, you can forget that that will ever happen, and you just have to pray that they do the right thing. And based on my experience with human resource departments, it's often going to be very difficult to prove, especially if you don't have it written down somewhere. Furthermore, they may also use it as an excuse to not give you the right raise, or if they promote you, they may say, hey, you're at the top end of our salary bands and we just can't do anything about it, so we're going to give you a promotion in name only, and then you're supposed to be happy about it. But I always find it fascinating when a rockstar candidate comes along who demands a higher than expected salary, or somebody who's in a critical role who is tendering their resignation to leave, and suddenly the human resource department can move mountains and make all kinds of things happen. So that's why it pays to know how to navigate your career with expert precision and reclaim control in your career. The next shady thing that human resource departments very frequently do is, if you come to them and complain about an employee or complain about your boss or complain about some condition in the workplace, you actually get put on a list yourself. And it may not be an official list, but you certainly gain a reputation and a target on your back. While they may tell you that they're going to look into it for you, oftentimes their first stop is at either your boss's office or your boss's boss's office to discuss you and your performance. And rest assured, they're going to go employ your employment file first to see what kind of history you have at the employer. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and complain about somebody if it's a legitimate complaint. But what I'm saying is, be very careful when you go to the human resource department, because oftentimes what happens is you are deemed the troublemaker, and then they start to look to, again, limit their liability. So oftentimes people will find that when they complain about their employer, when they go and file a complaint about their boss or other people in the department, and especially if this continues to happen, human resources will often try to separate the situation, but then they'll work to remove what they consider to be the root problem. And that oftentimes is the person who's lodging the complaint to begin with. The next shady thing that I've seen human resource departments do, and I've seen this several times, is they will lie to your face about whether or not layoffs are happening. So they'll tell you anything you want to hear, much like our politicians, but expect that they're probably going to do the exact opposite. And in fact, if your human resource department tells everybody in a formalized setting, we're not considering layoffs, you can guarantee that they are considering layoffs at that exact moment. And of course, they may start meeting with employees behind the scenes, especially if you're expected to sit down with some person who is in the human resource department to discuss your work. And this leads me to the next shady thing that they often do is they will have you rank your own performance and your own skill set, and then they'll use that against you when there is time for layoffs. So oftentimes before layoffs happen, there'll be somebody that'll go around from the human resource department and ask everybody to start ranking themselves and what their skills and experiences are.
What would you say you do here?
And they may use it under the guise of, well, we just want to get a better understanding of our workforce and how we can allocate resources. You need to read between the lines here, because they're looking for whether or not your skill is going to align with the long-term company vision. And you can guarantee at the same time, they're meeting with your bosses to ask about performance of their team. They're looking through a lot of different metrics, and in particular, your performance output and your performance ratings. And then they'll use that to determine, again, who's going to end up on that layoff list. So if the company is asking you to rank yourself and trying to make it look like it's not sinister, In a lot of cases, it actually is going to be used against you. So just be really careful. And if that happens, I would probably be updating my resume just in case. Which leads me to the final shady thing that they do is when those layoffs actually go through, they handle them so poorly. Holy crap. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I have never seen such poor handling of terminations and layoffs from human resources departments. It is absolutely out of control. And you got to think of all the public roastings that they've given, my channel included, that human resource departments would get better at it. But nope, they still lay off people through Zoom. They still lay off people by shutting off all of their equipment. They still lay off people by not even necessarily notifying them, but just by one day, you can't get into your building. There have been so many very public screw-ups of human resources departments that it's really hard to defend their behavior and the profession in general. So if you're a human resources leader watching this, please get better at treating people with dignity and humanity. Careers are difficult enough as it is. It is time for you to step up and push back on leadership teams that aren't in alignment with it. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I want to say I have worked with some amazing human resources people, and if they're watching this, you know who you are. But I've also worked with some not so good ones, and they probably aren't watching this because they're too busy doing shady things. Anyway, if you're somebody that's struggling in your career and you're dealing with this kind of stuff, check out my website. It's lifeafterlayoff.com, and it's loaded with all kinds of insider information about the employment process, about careers, about how to get jobs. And if you need more in-depth help in your job search, I offer some courses on resume writing, career strategy, interviewing, and how to leverage networking to your advantage. Anyway, hopefully you found this video to be enlightening. What's your opinion on the human resource department? I'm actually kind of afraid to ask that question, but leave a comment and let me know. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.